Hi, welcome to Daily Dose of Anime Recaps. In this video, we'll be taking a look at episodes 1 through 4 of Haikyuu, where a short but spunky boy pursues his dream of being a great volleyball player, along with his rival, where they learn to be a team and push each other to the limit to achieve their dreams. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be sure you don't miss the next episodes. We open with an orange-haired boy reminiscing about how there's a tall wall blocking him from reaching the top, and that the wall would be insurmountable alone. Luckily, he is not alone, he happily proclaims as more shoes join him on the volleyball court. We see the orange-haired boy, whose name is Shouyou, watching volleyball on his television with shocked fascination as the player on the screen seems to embody a bird with his incredible jumping height. This player is revealed to be known as the Little Giant for his short stature and amazing jumping ability. Cutting to 3 years and 3 months later, we see Shouyou on the volleyball court with his teammates. They have made it to their first tournament, and they are determined to win, but as they talk, a team of players at least a head taller than Shouyou walks into the gymnasium. The audience begins to chant for the tall team, Kitagawa Daiichi Junior High School, and the other volleyball teams all begin to feel fear, talking about how someone called the King is among them. Shouyou assures his team that he can jump them no matter how tall they are, but then is struck with stomach pains and rushes to the bathroom. On his way, he passes some Kitagawa Daiichi players trash-talking his team for their small team number and small team stature. He tells them off and they laugh at him, until the King walks by telling them they have no right to look down on any opponent as they are just bench warmers who ride on the reputation of their school. Once the bench warmers leave, Shouyou and the King size each other up, Shouyou proclaiming that they will give it their all and win, and the King tells him that's easy to say, but doing it will be difficult, as he intends to win every game through nationals. We cut to the first match beginning and Shouyou's team is losing horribly. Between each shot of Shouyou's team playing poorly, we see the training Shouyou went through over the last 3 years to get to where they are, with him training and each member of his team turning him down to be in on it. Until finally a flashback of Izumi tossing the ball so Shouyou can spike it merges with current time, and Izumi sets the ball for him. He spikes it and the opposing team blocks it. Again and again, Shouyou is outplayed by his opponents. The King, however, is getting angrier and angrier and begins yelling at his team, who are not taking Shouyou's team seriously. Shouyou dives for the ball and misses, and his teammates ask why he's trying so hard. He tells his teammates that they haven't lost yet despite being 1 point away from losing, and this strikes true to the philosophy of the King. He serves and Shouyou scores a point on them due to the laziness of one of the King's teammates. The King berates his teammates, saying Shouyou scored a genuine point on them. Shouyou gets a second surprise hit on them, and while it is out, the King is furious as Shouyou had done it with a bad set. 3 high schoolers watch them and discuss them, one saying that the King of the court will be a challenge for the next year, but another says that his money is on Shouyou. Shouyou tells the King that he will beat him someday, and the King tells him if he wants to rule the court, he will have to get better. After a montage of training for a year, Shouyou rushes to the court on the first day of school and finds the King practicing. After the initial shock of seeing one another, they banter back and forth about who will be the better player before it is revealed that the reason the King is here and not in the school with the best volleyball team around is because they rejected him for losing nationals. Shouyou asks why they would reject the King of the court, and he angrily yells at Shouyou not to call him that. The other high schoolers on the team show up and begin to size up the King of the court, whose real name is Kageyama. Shouyou notes that while Kageyama is slightly taller than the high schoolers, it's not by much and they are quite big. They also take note of Shouyou, saying they had admired his spirit and jumping ability. Shouyou and Kageyama begin to argue, and Shouyou challenges him, saying he's not the same guy he was last year, despite the high schoolers protesting that they're on the same team. Kageyama accepts the challenge, saying that he too is not the same person as last year. Kageyama does a vicious jump serve, and Shouyou jumps out of the way of the ball, surprising both himself and the high schoolers. He insists on one more, and this time moves to the ball, surprising the high schoolers again with his reflexes, but the ball deflects off his arms, into his face, and then hits the vice principal who had been watching, knocking his toupee off. The captain tries to tell them once again that they need to work as a team, but they still argue over him, but he finally gets their attention, telling them that they used to be a great team until a few years ago. Now, all the teams call them fallen rivals because they're the bottom of the top 8, a very middle-of-the-road team. He reminisces about when he he would see high schoolers from his neighborhood playing in the gymnasium in Tokyo, and that inspired him. Shouyou remembers being inspired by the volleyball team on the television 4 years ago. He says he intends to go to nationals this year and throws both Kageyama and Shouyou off the team, saying he needs a team that can work together, and clearly they cannot. Kageyama and Shouyou, now outside, begin to talk, and Kageyama says that he's good enough that he should be on the team. He decides to challenge them to a 2-on-2 match, and if he and Shouyou win, they get let back on the team. He tells Shouyou to do his best to stay out of the way. They argue some more until a beautiful girl shows up and asks them to let her through. Practice ends, and the high schoolers say that Kageyama and Shouyou will probably challenge them to a match to be back on the team, when all they have to do is apologize and say they'll work together. The captain accepts, saying that it will be a 3-on-3 match with Tanaka, a tough guy of the high schoolers, joining them on their team, while the third, mysterious first year will be on the captain's team. The captain says that if Kageyama can't win, then he cannot be setter on the team. After the captain shuts the door, his teammates ask why he's being so hard on them, harder than he usually is on first years. Kageyama and Shouyou discuss why Kageyama loves being a setter, and Tanaka shouts from inside the gym that practice is at 7 a.m. He does this on purpose, knowing Kageyama and Shouyou will show up at 5 a.m. to practice. When they arrive, they realize they cannot get in, but Tanaka arrives with the key. As he lets them in, he flashes back to his conversation with the captain, who explains that in junior high, both Shouyou and Kageyama were skilled but imperfect, and that he needs time working together, as together they can be the ultimate team. Tanaka warns them that if the captain finds out about their secret morning practice, they will be in trouble. And then Suga, another of the 3 high schoolers on the team, joins them in the gym. He said he knew they were up to something because Tanaka had volunteered for lockup duty, which he never does, but promises not to tell the captain. As they practice, Shouyou keeps insisting Kageyama toss him the ball so he can spike, and after a while, Kageyama sends a fast one at him, which bounces off his arms. Kageyama says that he is too slow and that he will not be helpful to winning. After the secret practice, Suga practices with Shouyou, giving him pointers on how to hit the ball effectively, and offers to toss for him as the official setter for the team currently. Suga asks him why he's so obsessed with beating Kageyama, and Kageyama overhears as Shouyou explains that if he can get good enough to beat Kageyama, he would be good enough to beat anyone. As the team practices, Shouyou spies through the door and follows along with their stretches. As he's doing this, Kageyama says he found a spot they can practice in secret. While they go there, the 2 other first years arrive in the gym. Kageyama and Shouyou have a hard time practicing with one another, and Kageyama gets mad when Shouyou accidentally calls him king again. Tanaka and Suga discuss the first years as Suga asks Tanaka if he will be okay, as the 2 new ones are incredibly talented. When we see that Shouyou and Kageyama have been practicing until nightfall, Shouyou asks for one more, and unlike his old teammates who would always want to stop, Kageyama agrees to it as if it wasn't even a question. As Shouyou prepares to hit the ball, a hand catches it. It's the new first years. Kageyama asks one of them how tall he is, and turns out he's 8 centimeters taller than Kageyama and still growing. The tall first year then says that he doesn't care if he wins or not, and so he can go easy on them if they want. Kageyama replies that he doesn't care if the first year tries or not, as he intends to win either way. The tall first year calls him the king of the court mockingly and says that his serves were so egocentric that it made him sick, and that he is not surprised his team lost, as they probably just couldn't tolerate him anymore. Kageyama leaves, and when the tall first year calls him king again and tosses the ball in the air, Shouyou jumps clear over his head and snatches it, telling him to stop ignoring him. As he leaves, he announces that his name is Tsukishima, and the other first year is named Yamaguchi. Once they've left, Kageyama and Shouyou continue to practice, and Tsukishima angrily says that guys who were that intense made him mad. After a montage of Kageyama and Shouyou practicing for days, we see Shouyou able to keep up with the shots Kageyama hits to him. For 15 straight minutes, Kageyama hits the ball to him, thinking he will tire him out or he will drop, but he keeps up with it. Suga, Tanaka, and Kageyama are all amazed at not only his athleticism but his fortitude and drive. Kageyama finally recognizes his talent and tosses for him, and despite his exhaustion, he leaps through the air and spikes it. Kageyama wakes up to a nightmare about his teammates calling him cocky as he loses nationals. We then see the team stretching, and the beautiful girl from earlier walks in and once again ignores all of Tanaka's flirting. Tsukishima starts loudly talking trash to the captain about Kageyama, Shouyou, and Tanaka. Tanaka becomes just as fired fired up as Shouyou as they swear they will beat him. The game begins and we see Tanaka spike on Tsukishima, and the captain remarks that he probably shouldn't have razzed him as it fired him up. Shouyou gets a toss and is elated to spike only to have Tsukishima block it, giving him flashbacks to being blocked at the tournament last year. He calls for one more but is once again blocked. Tsukishima mockingly tells Kageyama that since Shouyou is constantly getting blocked, he should do the king's toss since it decimates his teammates as well as his opponents. Kageyama says he won't need it and does his jump serve, but the captain receives it. Tanaka reveals that the receive is the captain's specialty. Tsukishima asks why Kageyama doesn't use the king's toss, and when Sho asks what that is, Tsukishima asks him why he thinks they call him king. Shouyou said he thought it was because other players were intimidated because he was good. Tsukishima reveals that it is actually because he is an oppressive dictator on the court and in the game before nationals. He was benched because his teammates refused to hit his tosses anymore. Kageyama admits that he indeed does not use his fast tosses anymore because of that, and Shouyou says that it makes no difference to him how fast they are. He will hit them regardless. Tsukishima says that he can't make up for the height with effort and serves. Kageyama has to decide who to toss to, but when he looks up, Shouyou is already in the air, ready to spike. He hits it and goes out, but he insists the point is that he hit it. He was there and he will hit any ball, so Kageyama should toss to him. Suga notes that while Kageyama's bad attitude is what stands out about him, he truly is an incredible player. Tanaka excitedly asks if they know how to do quick attacks. Shouyou says he has no idea what that means, and Tanaka points out that he just did it, and that he saw him do it last year as well. Shouyou says he has no idea how he does any of that, but he will spike any ball tossed to him. Tsukishima says that he simply isn't cut out to be a spiker as he is too short. Shouyou says he knows that, but he also knows who he wants to be like, and remembers a little giant who jumped high enough to spike over the tall players, and that he will fight to stay on the court as long as he can. Kageyama remembers being thrown off the court in the game before nationals and thinking the same thing as Shouyou, I want to be on the court as long as I can. Kageyama steps in to defend Shouyou, saying that breaking the wall in front of the spike is the setter's job. He pulls Shouyou aside and tells him that with his reflexes and speed, he can spike the king's toss. Shouyou actually misses the toss, not realizing how fast it truly would be. 3 more times he misses it. Kageyama starts to yell at him, and Suga tells him that he is making the same mistakes he made in junior high. He says that Shouyou is not trained or knowledgeable, but that he is fast, and that Kageyama is a master of reading players' movements, so he should use it to his advantage instead of expecting Shouyou to do something he simply doesn't know how to do. Kageyama tells Shouyou to use his maximum speed and maximum jump to get where there is no blocker, and he will get the ball to him. The rest of the team has their doubts until Kageyama perfectly analyzes the players and calculates Shouyou's maximum jump height. A lightning-fast spike occurs, but what truly shocks the team is that Shouyou had his eyes closed the entire time. Kageyama synced the ball perfectly with where his palm would be without even looking at him. They tried it a few more times and messed it up. However, they get it right once again, and Shouyou opens his eyes, seeing over the wall of hands and spiking successfully for the second time.